Hello everyone, this is Glenda Winkleman and welcome back to Creative Grandma. This video is a baby sweater that I made with the August Artisan Knit Crate. This was that beautiful indigo glow yarn that I received in my artisan box, and I wanted to work it up, and I thought what better way than to make a little baby sweater. Now this one is size 6 months. If you've never made a baby sweater before, this pattern is perfect for you. This is a simple single crochet, double crochet, and you're just working back and forth. You are not increasing, you are not decreasing. It's just back and forth stitching in simple pieces that you sew together to form the sweater, and then you just turn down the collar to make this little adorable collar, and then you just add this very simple chain 1 slip stitch border around your sweater. So again, if you've never made a baby sweater, this is probably the easiest way to get started, because once you learn the concept of crocheting a sweater and putting the pieces together, then you can go to the next step of actual shaping and increasing and decreasing. And I did want to tell you, now this artisan crate here for the indigo glow is only available until the end of August, and they are having that flash sale until the end of the month. So if you buy one monthly subscription, you get that second box for only $5 shipping. It's a wonderful, wonderful way to get introduced to Knit Crate at a wonderful value. So if you wanted to make this exact sweater in this exact yarn, then you're going to need to get on Knit Crate and get the artisan monthly subscription in order to get this yarn. So I'm going to go ahead and show you everything you need to make this sweater. But when I finished the video, I forgot to mention this yarn here is a multicolored yarn. So when I showed how to put your pieces together and the seaming method, you do have to be careful if you use a different yarn, because depending on what yarn you use is the method you use to sew your seams together. So if you're using a solid color or something that matches completely through like this multicolor, you could get away with seaming and whip stitching because it blended in so nicely. But if you're using a contrasting color when you're doing that seaming together, you have to be careful. So I did want to make that note that this video was for this specific yarn here, or for a similar yarn that would be a multicolor or something that blends together when you're sewing those seams together. So keep that in mind when you're piecing your garment together if you're using a different yarn. Also, I did forget, you're going to need 1/2 inch button for your little sweater, and I forgot to mention that in the video. So let's get started and let me show you what you need. So for this little baby sweater we're making today, what I'm using is the August Artisan Knit Crate box. It came with 2 of these wonderful skeins of yarn. This is a fingering weight yarn. It's by Dragonfly Fibers. It's 100% superwash merino wool. There's 430 yards, 393 meters, and 113 grams in each one of these gorgeous skeins. And I already started the sweater, and we're going to get into that next, but this is how it works up. Now this August Artisan Knit Crate is only available until the end of August. So if you like this pattern and you like to work it in this exact yarn, then you need to get on Knit Crate and subscribe to their Artisan Knit Crate before the end of the month, because every month the yarn colors change, so they're available month to month. So again, you're going to need 2 skeins of this yarn. Now I already used 1 skein up on the sweater so far, and realized I better film what the yarn looks like before I go ahead and wind this into a ball. So you need 2 of these, and you do get 2 skeins in each artisan knit box. So when you order this, there will be enough yarn to start and finish the sweater. The crochet hook is a size G6, so you'll need a size G6 US size crochet hook, and you're going to need a yarn needle. Now again, when you order the Artisan Knit Crate box, you're going to get 2 knit patterns. This pattern that I'm showing you today is not included in the box. This is my own private pattern that I chose to crochet out of the yarn. But if you get the box, you will receive these 2 knit patterns here. One is called Chain Reaction, and the other one is Be the Change. So again, these are knit patterns. So with the Artisan Crate, you get 2 knit patterns. One is a beginner pattern and one is an intermediate pattern. But what I do, because I don't knit, is I create my own crochet patterns, or I use a crochet pattern I already have. So again, this is what you're going to need for the project. You're going to need the August Artisan Knit Crate box, or 2 skeins of similar fingering weight yarn. I just thought this was absolutely gorgeous, so this is what I'm using. So let's get started on that sweater. So to start our sweater, we're going to go ahead and attach our yarn to our hook. Now I just tie a double knot. You can use whatever method you prefer to join your yarn. This is the way I've always done it. So I just tied a double knot. And we're going to start with the back of the sweater. So to start the back of the sweater, we need to chain 48. So to make a chain, you're going to yarn over your hook and pull it through the loop on your hook. This created your first chain right here, and this loop on your hook does not count as a chain. So yarn over, pull through that loop, that's 2. Yarn over, pull through, that's 3. Yarn over, pull through, that's 4. Continue in that manner until you have a chain with 48 chains, and I'll meet you back here to start row 1. I have my chain 48 ready, and now we're going to begin the pattern. So we're going to start with row 1. Let me zoom in just a little bit more. This yarn is really thin, so I want you to be able to see it good. We're going to skip our first chain here, and we're going to work into the second chain from hook, and we're going to work a single crochet. So skip this first chain, insert into that second chain, yarn over the hook, pull it through that chain. You have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over the hook and pull it through 2 loops. You just made a single crochet. We're going to work a double crochet into the next chain, yarn over the hook. You're just going to go under that top strand only of that chain, yarn over the hook, pull it back through that chain, yarn over the hook, pull it through 2 loops, yarn over the hook and pull it through 2 loops. You just made your double crochet. Now the first row will be just a little harder to make because you really have nothing to hold on to when you're crocheting. So it's easy stitches. It's just until you get that first 1 or 2 rows made. We're going to start the repeat now. You're going to single crochet into this next chain, and I'm only going underneath that 1 top loop. So insert your hook and work a single crochet. Yarn over the hook. You're going to double crochet into the next chain. Insert your hook into that chain and work a double crochet. That's the end of the repeat. We're going to repeat that across our chain, and we'll finish 1 chain from the end, and we'll work a single crochet into that last chain. So again, you're going to single crochet into the next chain, yarn over the hook. You're going to double crochet into the next chain, and you're just going to repeat that across. I'll show you one more time. Single crochet into the next chain, yarn over the hook and double crochet into the next chain. So go ahead and repeat that across. You'll end with 1 chain remaining, and we'll single crochet into the last chain. So go ahead and work across. I'll meet you at the last chain of row 1. I'm over at the end of row 1, and you can see we have 1 chain remaining. You ended with that double crochet, and we're going to single crochet into this ending chain. Insert your hook into that ending chain and work a single crochet. And this is what your work should look like. Now I'm going to zoom out. At this point you should have a tape measure, and I'm just going to take this, and your first row should measure 10 inches long, so lay it on a tape measure and it should come over to the 10-inch mark. And this is roughly about 9 stitches every 2 inches. So if you lay your tape measure here, I'll start at the 5, and if you count, it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, roughly 9 stitches. So if your piece measures 10 inches, you're doing good. If it's too short, then you need to up your hook size. If it's too long, then you need to downsize your hook size. That's how you check your gauge on this piece. So we're going to go ahead and start row 2. So this is a 1-row repeat pattern. It's very easy to do. So now to start row 2, let me zoom back up. We're going to chain 1, yarn over the hook, pull it through that loop. That's your chain 1, and you're going to turn your work. We're going to match our stitches. We're going to work a single crochet into this beginning single crochet. We're going to work a double crochet into the next double crochet, a single crochet into this next single crochet, a double crochet into the next double crochet, and you're just going to repeat that across your row, just matching the stitches. So insert your hook into that beginning single crochet, and I go under the top 2 loops of each stitch, and you're going to work a single crochet. Yarn over the hook. You're going to go underneath the top 2 strands of that next stitch, and you can see that stitch by looking on top of your work. Just insert your hook underneath those 2 strands and work that double crochet. Insert your hook into that next stitch. Now be careful, because sometimes that double crochet likes to pull over, so if you have to, just pull your work so you can see that next stitch, which is here. You're just going to go under those top 2 loops, insert your hook under those top 2 loops, and you're going to work a single crochet. Yarn over the hook, insert into the top of that next double crochet stitch. If you have to, turn your work so you can see those top 2 strands of yarn and work that double crochet. So that's all you're going to do across your work. Insert into that next single crochet, and you're going under the top 2 strands and work a single crochet. So this is your repeat. Yarn over the hook. You're going to go into the top of that next double crochet stitch under those top 2 loops and work a double crochet. Insert your hook into the top of that next single crochet right under the top 2 loops and work a single crochet. Just match those stitches up. You can tell your double crochet because it's the longer stitch. Your single crochet is the shorter stitch. So work a double crochet into the next double crochet, a single crochet into the next single crochet. Repeat that across. You'll be ending with a single crochet, and I'll meet you at the end of row 2. I'm over at the end of row 2, and we have 1 stitch remaining. Because this is a little lacy, you're going to have to look really hard for that last stitch if you're not used to crocheting. You're going to look for these last 2 strands here, and when I tell people, when you get to the end of your work, always look for what I call the side rainbow. It's just that little loop that goes sideways right here. That's how you know you're over at your last stitch. So when you see this, that's the side of your work, and this is the last stitch. So you worked in the double crochet, and this is your last single crochet. You'll see your 2 V's here. Insert under those top 2 strands and work a single crochet. So row 2 is finished. This is what your work looks like. I'll zoom out a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and work row 2, and we're going to work a total of 45 rows for the back. So what we're going to do is we're going to chain 1, you're going to turn your work, and we're just going to repeat row 2, and we're going to do that for rows 3 through 45. You're going to insert your hook into that first single crochet and work a single crochet. And then you start your repeat. Yarn over the hook, you're going to work a double crochet into this next double crochet stitch, going under the top 2 strands of yarn, and work a double crochet. Insert your hook into the top of that next single crochet under the top 2 strands and work a single crochet. That's all there is to it. You just match up those stitches with each row. You work a double crochet into the next double crochet, a single crochet into the next single crochet, and you repeat the pattern for rows 3 through 45. So go ahead and repeat row 2 until you have a total of 45 rows. I'll meet you at the end of row 45, and then we'll work our neck. I'm now over to the end of row 45, and what you want to do is just check your work. It should measure 10 inches across, and when you measure up and down, it should measure 10 inches. So it should be a perfect square of 10 by 10 inches. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to remove my crochet hook, and you're going to need 2 stitch markers. And what I'm going to do, I use safety pins. So I just have a big safety pin, and I'm going to count. I did not turn my work. This is exactly as you end row 45. This is where you did your last stitch, and you're going to count over 13 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. You're going to stick that stitch marker right into that 13th stitch. And then you're going to lay your work down, and you're going to go to the opposite side. You did not turn your work, you're still on that same side, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to count over 13 stitches from the opposite end. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. I'm going to stick my stitch marker into that stitch. So what we're going to do to work the neck is we're going to work this end first because we're still attached here, and this is where we finished off, and we're going to work 3 rows of our pattern. We start with the single crochet, we'll end with the single crochet, and we're only working in those 13 stitches, and we'll be working 3 rows. When we get that done, we'll be returning to the same side here. We're going to attach our yarn, and we're going to work our pattern across 13 stitches, and we're going to start with the single crochet, we'll end with the single crochet, and we're going to work 3 rows up and then stop, and that helps form our neck. So I'm going to insert my hook back into that last stitch of row 45 that we just finished. So let me zoom up just a little bit more. And we're going to start our neck opening. We're going to just work the same pattern, only we're only working it across 13 stitches to this stitch marker. So yarn over the hook and chain 1. You're going to turn your work. You're going to work a single crochet into that first single crochet stitch. zoom up just a little bit more. This is so fine of a yarn. Yarn over the hook, you're going to double crochet into that next double crochet. Insert your hook into the top of that next single crochet stitch and work a single crochet. Yarn over the hook, work a double crochet into that next double crochet. Single crochet into that next single crochet. Again, we're doing the same pattern, we're just doing it across to the 13th stitch. Yarn over the hook, double crochet into that next double crochet. Single crochet into that next single crochet. Double crochet into the next double crochet. Single crochet into the next single crochet. Double crochet into the next double crochet, and we're getting ready to come up onto our stitch marker. So we have a couple more stitches to go. We're going to single crochet into the next single crochet, double crochet into the next double crochet, and then we're going to end with a single crochet into the single crochet where you have your stitch marker. So right into that same stitch you're going to work a single crochet. So if you count your stitches, you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13 stitches. So now all you're going to do is chain 1, you're going to turn your work again, and you're going to repeat what you just did, and you're going to work 2 more rows. So insert into that beginning single crochet, work a single crochet, yarn over the hook, double crochet into that next double crochet, single crochet into the next single crochet. So go ahead and finish row 2, or this row here, and you're only working across 13 stitches. So this would be row 46, this would be row 47, and then you need to do one more row, row 48, and you're only working across the 13 stitches. So go ahead and work 2 more rows, this current row and one more row, and you're only working across 13 stitches. I'll be back at the end of row 48, and then we'll do the other side. I'm over at the end of row 48, and you can see I worked 3 additional rows, working only across 13 stitches where my stitch marker was. So now I'm just going to fasten off. I'll weave that in later, and then I'm just going to remove my stitch marker. So that would be our left side of our neck opening, because this is the back side, this is the wrong side of the work. So this is our left side. So now what we're going to do is we're going to turn our work, we're just going to flip it over, and then we're going to do the same thing on the right side of the neck opening. We're going to insert our hook into this first single crochet stitch. So just grab your yarn and you're going to pull it through. I leave about a 2 to 3 inch length, and then I secure it when I'm all done. So pull that new color through, you're going to chain 1, and you're going to single crochet into that beginning single crochet. And then we're going to work across to our stitch marker. So you'll have a total of 13 stitches across, and we're going to do the same pattern. I get my end. I'm going to work right into the stitch and around this end. So yarn over the hook, insert into that next double crochet, and I am working right over that end piece of yarn, and I'm working a double crochet. Insert into that next single crochet and work a single crochet. That's your repeat. You're going to double crochet into the next double crochet, single crochet into the next single crochet. You're going to work that same stitch pattern over to your stitch marker, and then you're going to work 2 more rows. So you're going to work a total of 3 rows, and you're only working across the 13 stitches over to your stitch marker. So go ahead and repeat that. Work 3 more rows across 13 stitches, and I will meet you at the end of row 48. So I just worked my other 3 rows on the opposite side of my work. I'm just going to take my stitch marker out, and this is what your piece should look like. This is the back of our sweater, and if you measure it now, it should measure 10 inches across by 10.5 long from the top of the neck, clear at the top, to the bottom. It will measure 10.5 inches. So that's what the back looks like. We just completed the back of our sweater, so now we're going to move on to the 2 front pieces that we're going to work for the front of the sweater. So I'll be right back and we'll get that started. So I'm getting ready to start the front right side of the sweater, and this is so simple. We're just doing basically the same thing we did for the back of the sweater, but we're going to chain 24. So yarn over the hook, pull it through your loop, that's your first chain, yarn over, pull through, that's 2, yarn over, pull through, that's 3. Continue until you have a chain with 24 chains, and I'll be back to start row 1. So I have my chain 24, and we're going to work the same pattern that we worked for the back. We're going to skip our first chain. We're going to work a single crochet into that second chain, insert your hook into that second chain, and work your single crochet. Yarn over the hook, you're going to insert your hook into the next chain and work a double crochet. And the first row for me is a little hard because there's nothing for me to grab a hold of until I get a row or 2 made. So you're going to single crochet into the next chain, insert into that next chain, and work a single crochet. And again, this is the same pattern we used on the back. So your repeat across will be yarn over the hook, insert into that next chain, and work a double crochet. Insert into the next chain and work a single crochet. And you're just going to repeat that same pattern across, and you'll end with a single crochet. So you're going to double crochet into the next chain, single crochet into the next, double crochet into the next, single crochet into the next chain. You end with a single crochet into your last chain. So go ahead and work row 1, and I'll be back to show you how to do row 2. So I'm over to the end of row 1, and if you measure your work, it should measure 5 inches across. So always make sure you check that gauge and adjust your hook size accordingly. So now we're going to go ahead and start row 2. So for rows 2 through 45, we're going to work it the same as we did the back. You're going to chain 1, you're going to turn your work, and we're going to work a single crochet into this beginning single crochet. And then you start your repeat. Yarn over the hook, insert into that next double crochet stitch, and work a double crochet. Insert your hook into that next single crochet and work a single crochet. And that's all there is to your repeat. So go ahead and work a double crochet in the next double crochet, a single crochet into the next single crochet, work that across. You'll end with a single crochet into that ending single crochet, and you're going to repeat row 2 until you get a total of 45 rows, and then I'll be back and we'll start the shaping of our neck on the right front side of our sweater. So I'll be back at the end of row 45. So I'm over to the end of row 45 of the right front side of our sweater, and your piece should measure 10 inches long and it should measure 5 inches across at this point. So now we're going to go ahead and do our neck shaping. So we're getting ready to shape our neck, so we're going to turn our work, and we need to get over to where we need to be. So we're going to slip stitch in the first 10 stitches. So insert your hook into that first single crochet and slip stitch. That's 1. Into the next stitch, slip stitch, that's 2. Into the next stitch, slip stitch, that's 3. Into the next stitch, slip stitch, that's 4. And do this loosely so your stitches have a nice look on top and they're easy to get into. So that's 4. Insert into the next stitch, slip stitch, that's 5. Into the next stitch, slip stitch, that's 6. Into the next stitch, slip stitch, that's 7. Into the next stitch, slip stitch, that's 8. Into the next stitch, slip stitch, that's 9. Into the next stitch, slip stitch, and that's 10. And then just go back to the beginning of your work and make sure you have 10 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So now we're getting ready to work our 13 stitches. So we're going to slip stitch into that next stitch, insert your hook, and work a slip stitch. You're going to chain 1, and you're going to insert your hook into that same single crochet stitch and work a single crochet. And this is the first stitch of the 13 we need to work across. Yarn over the hook, insert into that next double crochet, and work a double crochet. This is the start of your repeat across. Insert into the next stitch and work a single crochet. So go ahead and work a double crochet into the next stitch, a single crochet into the next stitch. You'll work that across and you'll end with a single crochet, and I'll meet you at the end of the row. I'm over at the end of row 46, and if you count your first stitch, this was where we chained 1. You don't count that. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. So now for rows 47 and 48, you're going to chain 1 and you're going to turn your work. You're going to insert your hook into that beginning single crochet and work a single crochet. And then you're going to start your repeat. Yarn over the hook, insert into the top of that next double crochet and work a double crochet. Insert into that next single crochet and work a single crochet. And that's your repeat. So go ahead and work your repeat across. You're going to work a double crochet into the next double crochet, a single crochet into the next single crochet, and you're only working across the first 13 stitches. You're going to end with a single crochet into this 13th stitch, and then you will turn your work, chain 1, and work 1 more row. Remember, these 3 rows only have 13 stitches. So go ahead and finish rows 47 and 48, and I'll meet you at the end of row 48. I'm at the end of row 48, and your piece should measure 10.5 inches from top to bottom, and then it should measure 5 inches across. So I'm going to go ahead and fasten off. And I'm leaving a sewing length. I think I forgot to mention that. So I'm just going to fasten it off, leaving enough to sew my seam together across the top of my sweater. Now here's the back of our sweater, and then this is our right front piece of our sweater. So it fits there and it just matches for the neck shaping. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to work the front piece, the left front side of our sweater, and that's basically made the same as this side up to the end of row 45. So I'll be right back and we'll get the other side of the front of our sweater made. So we're getting ready to start the left front side of the sweater, and again it's basically the same as the right front. We're going to start with the chain 24. So I already attached my yarn on the hook, so yarn over the hook, pull it through the loop, that's 1, yarn over the hook, pull it through the loop, that's 2, yarn over the hook, pull it through the loop, that's 3, continue until you have a chain of 24. I'll be right back to start row 1. I have my chain 24 made, and we're going to just repeat our pattern. We're going to skip this first chain, we're going to insert our hook into the second chain, and we're going to work a single crochet. Yarn over the hook, insert into the next chain, and work a double crochet. And this is the start of your repeat. Insert into the next chain and work a single crochet. And that's the end of the repeat. I'll show you one more time. Yarn over the hook, insert into the next chain and work a double crochet. This is the start of the repeat. Insert your hook into the next chain and work a single crochet. That's the end of the repeat. So go ahead and work 1 double crochet into the next chain, a single crochet into the next, repeat that across. You will end with a single crochet, and I will meet you at the end of row 1. So I'm over at the end of row 1, and again your work should measure 5 inches across. So I'm going to go ahead and just start row 2. So rows 2 through 45 are exactly the same as the right front side. So we're going to chain 1, you're going to turn your work, you're going to work a single crochet into that first single crochet, and then you start your repeat. Yarn over the hook, insert it into that next double crochet and work a double crochet. Insert your hook into that next single crochet and work a single crochet. And that's the end of your repeat. So you're going to work a double crochet into the next double crochet, a single crochet into the next single crochet. You're going to work that across. You're going to end with a single crochet into that last single crochet, and you're going to repeat row 2 until you have a total of 45 rows. At the end of row 45, I'll be back and we'll start our neck shaping. I'm over at the end of row 45 of the left front side of our sweater, and it should measure 5 inches across and it should measure 10 inches in length. So now we're going to go ahead and get ready and work our neck. So I'm just going to tighten up my loop, Let me zoom up a little here. And again, we're only going to be working across 13 stitches. So we're going to chain 1. We're going to turn our work. We're going to come down and we're going to single crochet into this first single crochet stitch. Insert your hook and make 1 single crochet. And then we're going to do a repeat. We're going to work a double crochet into this next double crochet, a single crochet into the next single crochet, and we're going to do that a total of 6 times. So we will be working across the next 12 stitches. Yarn over the hook, insert into that next double crochet, and work a double crochet. This is the start of the repeat. Insert your hook into that next stitch, that next single crochet stitch, and work a single crochet. That's the end of the repeat. You're going to repeat that 5 more times. So double crochet in the next double crochet, single crochet in the next single crochet, do that 5 more times. You should have worked across 13 stitches. I'll meet you at the end of row 46. I'm at the end of row 46, and if you look at your work, you see that we only worked across 13 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We're leaving the rest of these stitches unworked. So now we're just going to repeat that row 2 more times. We're going to chain 1 and you're going to turn your work. And we're just going to repeat the same pattern. We're going to single crochet into this beginning single crochet. And then we start our repeat. Yarn over the hook, insert into that next double crochet, and work a double crochet. You're going to insert your hook into that next stitch and work a single crochet. That's the end of the repeat. You're going to double crochet into the next double crochet, single crochet into the next single crochet. So repeat the repeat across. You will end with a single crochet. You're going to turn your work and then repeat this row 1 more time. So at the end of row 48, I'll be back and we'll fasten off our work. So I'm at the end of row 48 of our left front side of our sweater, and your piece should measure 5 inches across. And now, since we worked the 3 rows of our neck edging, it should measure 10.5 inches. So I'm just going to go ahead and fasten off my work, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to make the sleeves. So I'll be right back and we'll get the sleeve started. So we're getting ready to start the sleeve. So for the sleeve we need to chain 36. So I already have my loop attached to my hook. So yarn over, pull it through, that's 1. Yarn over, pull it through, that's 2. Yarn over, pull it through, that's 3. Continue until you have a chain with 36 chains, and I'll be back to start row 1. So I have my chain with 36 chains, and we're getting ready to start the sleeve. Now with the sleeve, we're going to be doing the same stitch pattern. So I know this is repetitious with me showing you the same thing over and over, but I'm just doing it because we're starting a new part of the sweater, but it is the same, very same stitch pattern. We're going to skip the first chain. We're going to insert our hook into that second chain, and we're going to work a single crochet. And then we start the repeat. Yarn over the hook, insert into that next chain, and you're going to work your double crochet. Again, this is the start of the repeat that you're going to work across your chain. So you start with the double crochet and then you single crochet into the next chain. And that's the end of the repeat. So yarn over the hook, insert into that next chain, and work a double crochet. Again, this is the start of the repeat. insert your hook into the next chain and work a single crochet. And you're just going to repeat that across to the end of your chain, and you'll end with a single crochet into the very last chain. Go ahead and work across row 1. I'll meet you at the end of row 1 and we'll get row 2 started. I'm over at the end of row 1 and this is what your work should look like. So now for rows 2 through 24, we're just going to work row 2 over and over until you get to 24 completed rows. So for row 2, we're going to chain 1 and we're just going to match our stitches across. So we have a single crochet as the first stitch. We're going to insert our hook into that single crochet and we're going to work a single crochet. Next stitch is a double crochet, so yarn over the hook, insert into that double crochet and work a double crochet. And this is the start of your repeat. You're going to work a double crochet into that double crochet. You're going to insert your hook into the next single crochet and work a single crochet. That's the end of the repeat. I'll show you one more time. The next stitch is a double crochet, and you can tell because how long it is. Yarn over the hook, insert into that next stitch and work your double crochet. Your next stitch is a single crochet, insert into that single crochet and work a single crochet. So just match your stitches up across, double crochet in the next double crochet, single crochet into the next single crochet, repeat that across. You'll end with a single crochet into the last single crochet, and you're going to repeat row 2 until you have a total of 24 rows. I'm going to go ahead and work until I have 24 rows finished, and then I'll be back. I'm back and I have my 24 rows finished. I fastened off, and your piece should measure 5 inches from the bottom to the top. So if you measure from row 1 to row 24, it should measure 5 inches. And if you measure across, it'll be 7.5 inches. That's the measurements of what your sleeve should be. Now, since you have your first sleeve done, you need to go back to the video where we started with the chain 36, and you need to make a second sleeve exactly the same as the first. So go ahead and make your second sleeve. I'm going to go ahead and make mine, and then I'll be back and we'll start sewing our pieces together. So I just finished my second sleeve. So you should have a total of 5 pieces. You should have your 2 sleeves, then you should have your front 2 pieces of your sweater, and then you should have your back of your sweater. Let me zoom out just a little bit more. Okay, so what we're going to do is you're going to start sewing your sweater together. We're going to sew the front 2 pieces to the back, and then we're going to sew the sleeves on, and then we're going to go do our trim work around the neck, the end of the sleeves, the bottom of the sweater, and up the front center. So what you're going to do is, here's your sweater back, and this is the right side where your little starting piece of yarn from when you did your foundation chain should be on the left hand side. So this is the back of the sweater, and this is the right side facing. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip this sweater around so the back is in the back, the neck opening is facing you, and then we're going to take our front of our sweater. We have 2 pieces. And again, look for this. This is on the wrong side. This is on the right. You need it to be on the left. So take that, turn it to the left. Make sure that little piece from your foundation chain is on the left. So this is the front left side of the sweater. So we're just going to butt that right up against here. And you should have the same amount of stitches, 13 stitches. Let me get my ends out of the way. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this piece And again, you're going to look for this end, and it needs to be to the left. And you're going to butt that up against the neck opening up here where you have the 13 pieces. Sorry about all my ends. So I'm going to get the yarn needle, and we're going to start, and we're going to sew these two pieces together here. And then we're going to come over and sew this together. So I'm just going to move this piece out of my way for now, and I'm going to turn this sweater so I can show you how I sew my work together. So I have my yarn needle. I use a steel needle, and I'm just going to grab some of this yarn, enough to sew that across. And usually I just fold my yarn in half a little bit. I take it down across the top of my needle and I pinch it, and then I pull it down, and then I can thread it right through that opening. So I'm going to zoom up really close. Whoops. So here we have our work, and what I'm going to do, I hope everyone can see this okay. We're going to come up through the bottom of our first stitch. You're just going to find that first stitch, and you're going to come up from the bottom up through, and you're going under the top 2 loops only. And I just pull that through and leave a little bit of an end. And then we're going to go over to the first stitch on the second piece. You're going to find that first stitch. I better put my glasses on. Here is our first stitch here. Whoops, my fingers are in the way. You can see that single crochet, and we're just going under those first 2 loops of that stitch, and you're coming from the bottom up. And then what I do is I come over and I do tie a knot. I make sure that this is secure, and I hide this on the back. I just tie a double knot and make sure that is firmly secure, because when you wash your sweater, you don't want this coming apart. So then I'm going up, and I'm coming up through the second stitch. So find your next stitch. It's right here, and you're just going to come up underneath those top 2 loops only. And when you look, you'll see that I'm coming up under these 2 loops here from the bottom up. I have too many ends here in my way. And then you're going to go over to the next stitch, look for those top 2 loops, and you're just going to go from the bottom up, and you're just going to pull that tight. You're going to go back over to the next stitch. I'm just going under those 2 loops from the bottom up. I'm going over to the next stitch, and I'm just going underneath the top 2 loops from the bottom up, and we're just going to work ourselves across those stitches. Pull your work up a little, go underneath the next stitch under the top 2 loops only, go from the bottom up, come across, pull up your work, go to the next stitch. If you have to pull your work up a little bit till you see those top 2 loops, go ahead. You're going from the bottom up, go from the bottom up underneath those 2 loops, and then you just pull your work tight, and we're going to repeat that across to the end of our sweater. So I'm just going to go ahead and work quickly across, and you can just follow me as well. I'm just going underneath the stitches and through the top 2 loops only, and we're just going to work that right across the top of our sweater. Now I'm doing these loose right now, and then I'll tighten this up a little bit when I get to the end and pull that a little bit tighter. You can pull it so you can't really see that thread any longer, and it pulls those stitches together. So I'm going to finish going across. I have to lift my work up a little so I can see that next stitch. So I just pull it up a little. I look for the next stitch. I look for those 2 loops and I come from the bottom up. And then I lift the next side up. I pull it up a little bit. I look for those next 2 loops of that next stitch. I take my hook under the top 2 loops only. Sorry if part of that was out of the video. I was watching what I was doing and not the monitor. Pick your piece up a little bit, find that next stitch, and you're going under the top 2 loops only of that stitch. Go from the bottom up, pull your work up, look for the next stitch. You're going to go under the top 2 loops only, and I just repeat that across, going from the bottom up. And again, you can leave this loose if it's easier for you to do so, and then you can tighten it up when you get to the end. Just a few more stitches to go. We have 2 more to go. And we're over to the end. I'm going to go back in. Sometimes I double stitch on this last stitch. I like to make sure that's nice and secure, and I like my stitches even on the end. So I'm over to the end, and you can see some of my stitches if you look really close. I'm going to see if I can get even closer. I hope part of this was in the video. I wasn't really watching, and I'm sorry about that. It's really hard to do this and watch the monitor. So then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull a little bit and tighten this up so you don't see those stitches. And it pulls this together to where you really can't see your stitches where you work this together. And it just makes a really nice seam to your sweater. So this is where we joined it together, and you can't really see any of the threads. It just blends in nicely. So go ahead and repeat that to the other side. Make sure your right side is facing. I'm going to zoom out just to show you where to place that other piece. So your back is to the back, and remember your right sides are facing. We're sewing on the right side, not the wrong side. We're piecing this together right side facing. So then you're going to take your next front side piece, your left front side. You're going to make sure this little end of your yarn is to the left. Lay it down, butt it right up against the top of that back piece, and then repeat what we did here to this side, and then our back and front pieces are joined together, and then we'll go ahead and attach the sleeves, and I'll be back to show you how to do that. I'm back, and I forgot to show everyone I sewed this together, but what I do is I flip it on the wrong side. I take what leftover yarn is on my hook, I tie that knot to secure it, and then I take my needle and I weave right into the back side, in and out through these stitches. So always weave in ends on the wrong side of your work. No matter what you're working on, weave on the outside. And I go through quite a few stitches, make sure that's nice and secure, my ends. So I'm going underneath the stitches, and then I just pull it through, and then I just fasten off, and I do that with all my ends. And that's how you weave in your ends on the back of your work, and you can't see them. So I'm going to go ahead and weave in the rest of my ends, sew my other side on, and then I'll be back to do the sleeves. So my sweater front is now attached to the sweater back. So now what we're going to do is make sure it stays right side facing, and your little ends again should always be on the left. That tells you that's the right side of your work. So I'm just going to turn it sideways now, like so, and we're going to grab one of our sleeves, and you're going to find the center of that shoulder seam here, and we're going to match it up to the center of our sleeve. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a tape measure. So your sleeve should measure 7.5 inches. So we need to go over to 3 3/4 inches, which this is the 3.5 mark. I think I have a glare on that. Let me zoom up. So we're going over to the 3 3/4 inch mark here. This is 3.5, and then you go over to that next mark between the 3.5 and the 4. And I'm going to go ahead and stick a giant safety pin right through that stitch where it's 3 3/4 inches. And then I'm going right up here in the center of my seam, and I'm going to pin that right to my center seam. And what this is doing is it's just holding it in place until you get your stitches. Once you get to that point, then you can take your safety pin out. So then the next step of joining the sleeve, this is how I do it. Everybody might have their own method. But the most important thing is, and especially if you've never made a sweater before, is we've matched the center point up, but now you need to make sure you have the equal amount of space between the end of the sleeve down to the bottom of the back of the sweater. Now I show 7 inches exactly on this side, so I need to make sure it's 7 inches exactly on this side. So it's not quite 7 inches. I have 1/4 of an inch, so I just need to move this ever so slightly up a couple stitches. I'll remeasure it. Now I have 6.5 to 6 3/4. I come down here and I have 6 3/4. So 6 3/4 on both sides. So now I'm just going to take a safety pin and I'm just going to go ahead and secure this right where the 6 3/4 line is. Just with my safety pin. You can use a smaller safety pin if you wish. And then I'm going to come down here. Let me remeasure to make sure I didn't move that when I was attaching my safety pin. So 6 3/4. It's still in the same place, so I'm just going to go ahead and place my safety pin marker here. And you'll repeat this process on the other side. So now, even though it comes down, moves back and forth, it's right in the position where it needs to be. So as we work across, we'll just take our safety pins out. So I'm going to go ahead and thread my needle, and I'll be right back and show you how to sew this together. So I'm turning my sweater sideways just so you can see better what I'm doing. And it's basically what we did before. I'll be working under the top 2 loops of the stitches across here. And then I'll be working in the side post of the stitches over here. So I'm going to start by going right underneath this first stitch where my safety pin is. I'm going right through the side of that stitch, and I'm coming from the bottom up. And then what I try to do is leave a long enough length so I can get my yarn needle back in there when I'm all done sewing and weave that in on the back. I'm going to come back over here to this first stitch, and I'm just coming up from the bottom up underneath those top 2 strands right here. I'll zoom in just a little closer. I don't want to get so close that it blurs it, but I hope you can see this. And then I'm going to pull up from the bottom up. And then I'm going to come back over and come from the bottom up right through that same beginning stitch that we started. And then I'm going to pull that tight. And then I'm going to take my safety pin out because my first stitch is intact and I'm ready to go. So again, we're just going to come up, and I'm coming from the same side here, and we're just going to go from the bottom up, and we're just going to go right through that stitch, right through the end of that stitch, from the bottom up. Then you're going to go over to the other side, lift up, find that stitch, and you're going to go under those top 2 loops only from the bottom up and pull up. Just pull it tight. You're going to go over to the next stitch, and we're just going to go into the post of that stitch. You just kind of need to go right through the post, right through the side of the stitch. And then you're going to go from the bottom up and pull that tight. You're going to pick up the other piece. You're going to find the next 2 loops of that next stitch, go from the bottom up, pull that through, then you're going to jump back to the other side. You're going to pull up on this piece, and you're going to work through the post of the stitch. You're going to come from the bottom up, and then we're going to go back over to the other side under the 2 loops only, bottom up, jump back over to the next stitch, and you're going to try to work through the post of that stitch. Right through the side of the stitch. That way there's a portion of this post left and you're not pulling and making a big gaping hole. You don't want the hole, you just want to go through the side of the stitch so there's still part of that stitch there. And then come back over, go up from the bottom up through the top 2 loops of that stitch. So go ahead and repeat that across, and as you come to your safety pins, once you secure that at that spot, then you can take your safety pin out and work across to the end. And if you need to, you can double check your measurements as you go. Just take your tape measure, and before you do too much, just make sure that that says 6 3/4, and at the other end it says 6 3/4 before you pull it so tight that you have to rip it all out. So I'll meet you when I get my sleeve finished, and then you just repeat for the other side. So I sewed my sleeve onto my sweater. So what you're going to do is click back on the video and repeat to the other side of the sweater. And then when we fold our sweater in two, you can see how your little sleeve is already attached to your sweater. So go ahead and repeat that, and I'll be back after I get my second sleeve attached to my sweater. So I have both my sleeves sewed onto our sweater, and this is what it looks like. This is the back, this is the front, and the right side is facing. So now to sew the underarms and to the back to the sweater, I do it a little bit differently, but you can do it whatever method you prefer. I'm going to take the bottom of my front of my sweater, and I'm just going to pick it up and fold it towards the back. And what I'm doing is now I have the wrong sides facing. I'm going to swing that sweater around, and I'm going to pin the bottoms together down in the corner. And I just like to use my big safety pins. And what this does is when you're sewing along, if you get a little too tight, then you're not clear up here and have like a 1-inch gap at the bottom. It just kind of helps keep this in place. I also pin it right underneath the corner of the arm. I do not pin it here because I know where I'm going to start. This just helps give me a guide to keep it in place as I'm sewing this together. Now when I do the sewing on the wrong side of this, I'm just going to use a whip stitch. So I'm going to just go ahead and get a strand of yarn that I think is long enough to go across and down all in one piece, because you don't want to piece this together. You want to try to sew it all with one length. So let me grab my needle. And I pinch it down over the needle, and then I can push it right through the end of my needle. I'm going to zoom up, and I'm going to start here at the corner. Now when I flip this sweater around, I'm going to end up starting at the bottom and working up and around. So it just depends on what side I'm starting. So let me zoom up. So again, I'm just going to bring my yarn up through the bottom of this first stitch. And then up from the bottom up through the first stitch on the other side. I hope you can see that. So I came up through the bottom of this stitch, and then I came over and come up from the bottom to the top through the matching stitch on the other side. Now I want to keep a length that when I'm done sewing I can come back, hook this onto my yarn needle, so make sure you have a long enough length to make it easier to work with, and then you can come back and weave in that end. Now I'm going to come back up from the bottom through the top through that same first stitch that we started with. And then you're just going to pull that tight. And then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to whip stitch. I'm going to match these rows up, and if you see, you can see there's a little knot, like this little knot here. Let me see if I can, I'm going to zoom up just a little bit more. I hate to be too close so you can't see it but have it distort it. But I'm lining up my rows, and you can see that here's a knot, here's a knot. This is one side, that's the next. Then there's the loop. Here's the loop, here's the loop, here's the knot, here's the knot. So you're just going to match them up, and you're just going to whip stitch. I try to go under at least 2 strands of the post of that stitch and come over and match it up. And all I'm doing is just whip stitching this across my work. I'm going to go into that knot. I'm going to come over and match it up with the other knot. And again, you're working on the wrong side of your work. If you're working on the right side of your work, you're going to end up having a seam, a slight subtle seam, and you don't want that. When we flip this over, you won't see a seam. So grab 2 strands of that next stitch where it kind of looks like a loop. Come over, grab the other 2, matching, and we're just sewing. We're just going to whip stitch this right around the underarm and down the side, and that's all you're going to do. Just match up, keep those rows, try to keep them straight and match them up. So go ahead and work that across the underarm of your sleeve and then down the side, and I'll be back after I do this side and the next side, and I'll be back and we'll start the trim. So I have my sweater completely sewed together and the wrong side is facing, so I'm just going to turn my sweater right side out. Our sweater is now right side facing, and you can see we have a little bit of gap here, but we're going to fill that in when we do our trim work. So we're going to start with the sleeves. It doesn't matter. I'm going to go ahead and start with the right sleeve. I'm going to grab my hook, grab my yarn, and I'm going to start right at the bottom seam. So let me zoom up. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to start on the left side of the seam right here, and it may be a little bit difficult to tell because it's a little lacy, but you're going to try to find that first stitch, or just go down here until you see the first 2 strands here of this stitch. Insert your hook under those first 2 strands of that stitch. Now that might be tight because I just did a double knot there. I'm just going to pull my new color through. I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to single crochet into that same space. I'm going to find my next stitch. So look on the front side if you can't tell. Here's 2 loops here, here's 2 loops here. And try to find, if you're not sure by looking there, here's a stitch. You can tell by the double points of that stitch. Your next stitch is that double crochet. You work in the base of the stitch, and I'm working directly over this strand of yarn here, and that helps weave it in. So insert underneath the next stitch. This is really tight, and work a single crochet. And all you're going to do is find the next stitch, and you're going to work 1 single crochet in the base of each stitch in that foundation chain around your sleeve. So just keep inserting into that next chain of that foundation chain, and it should be at the base of the next stitch. And you're going to work 1 single crochet in each stitch around, and I will meet you on the right side of that joining seam and show you how to join. So I'm over at the end of round 1 of our sleeve trim, and this space here is not a stitch. That's where part of the joining seam. So I just worked my last single crochet, and we're going to join by going under the top 2 strands of that first single crochet we made. Yarn over the hook, pull through that stitch, and pull through the loop on your hook. Now we're going to do one more round. We're going to chain 1, and we're going to slip stitch into the next stitch. Yarn over the hook, pull it through the stitch, and pull it through the loop on the hook. You're going to chain 1. Insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over the hook, pull it through the stitch and through the loop on your hook. You just slip stitched. Again, this is the repeat. You're going to chain 1 and slip stitch into the next stitch. Insert your hook into the stitch front to back, yarn over the hook, pull it through the stitch, and pull it through the loop on your hook. You're going to chain 1, slip stitch into the next stitch, insert your hook, yarn over the hook, pull it through the stitch, and pull it through the loop on your hook. Go ahead and repeat that around. I will meet you here at the last single crochet of round 1, and I'll show you how to join round 2. So I just finished my repeat of chain 1 and slip stitch, and I just slip stitched into that last single crochet around. This right here, this is what I call the joining bar. This is not a stitch, so don't work in that or you'll have one too many stitches. We're going to end with the chain 1, skip your joining bar, and you're going to go right up here into that next stitch, and you're going to slip stitch. And then you're going to fasten off, and you're going to go ahead and repeat the same process to the other edge of your opposite side of your sweater, to that sleeve edge. So I'm going to go ahead and fasten off, do my other sleeve, and I'll be right back to do the rest of our trim. So I have my edges of my sleeves finished, and it creates just a nice little decorative stitch around the edging. Both ends are done. You can see this. This one has a little bit of a dark spot, but there's the edging on our sleeves. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start over here on the left side of this seam here where we joined our pieces together. So we're going to start on the left side, and we're going to work the same stitch pattern across the bottom, up the top, around the neck, across the top, back down the side, around the other side, and across the back and back to the beginning. So I'll be right back to go into a little more detail of how to finish this last set of edging and finish our sweater. So I'm back, and before we actually start the edging, what we're going to do is we're going to count down 13 rows. So you find that first single crochet here at the top. Let me zoom in just a little bit more. And you're going to count down 13 stitches, or 13 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13, and you're going to stick a stitch marker right into that 13th stitch down from the top. And you're also going to do it to the other side. So go over to the other side. Now it's a little bit harder to count on this side, so I'm going to go over to the second stitch and count down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. I'm going to bring my stitch marker out to the edge, and I'm just going to mark that 13th stitch down, or the 13th row down from the top. So you should have both rows marked with stitch markers. So I'm getting ready to start the border around our sweater. So what we're going to do is we need our stitches to be on the right side of the work. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn the sweater upside down, and we're going to start on the left side. Here's your sweater. This is the right side facing. This is the right front. You're going to turn that sweater upside down. So now the right front is now on the left side, and you're going to go up here to the left side of this joining seam where you join the front to the back and insert your hook. You're going to take your yarn, and you're just going to leave about a 3-inch length, or however you want to join, and pull that new color through. Let me zoom up. You're going to chain 1, and you're going to single crochet into that same beginning stitch. Now I'm working right over this beginning end that I have from my starting yarn. You're going to find the next stitch, which is here. You're going to insert into the base of that stitch. I'm working right around my end until I weave that in, and you're going to work a single crochet. And you're going to keep doing that. Find your next stitch, insert your hook in the base of that stitch in that chain, and work a single crochet. Find your next stitch, insert your hook at the base of that stitch into that chain, and work a single crochet. And you're going to repeat that around the back of the sweater. You're going to go ahead and crochet right around the back of the sweater. When you get to the joining seam, you're going to skip that seam and go right into that next stitch and work right over to the corner, the bottom corner of the other front side of the sweater. So let me zoom out. Here's where I started. I'm going to single crochet in the base of each stitch across to my seam. I'm going to jump over that little gap in my seam, and I'm going to go into that next stitch, and then I'm going to single crochet right across to this corner here, the bottom corner. So when you get here at the bottom corner, stop, and I'll be back and show you how to work up your sweater. So I worked across the bottom of the sweater. Now we do have the one section over here that's unworked where we started at that seam on the left side of the seam, but that's okay, we'll come back to that. We worked across the bottom of the sweater and we're over at this corner. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go into the next row end stitch. So you're just going to start right up the side. Let me see if I can zoom in even a little closer. So you worked into that last stitch. You're going to turn your work, and now we're working up the front center of our sweater, and you'll have your stitch marker into that 13th stitch. So what we're going to do is we're going to work one single crochet in each row end stitch up to the top corner. When you come to this stitch here, you make your single crochet, and then you take your stitch marker and move it up to the new single crochet that you made in that same stitch. Just move your stitch marker up to the next round. So let me zoom in. Insert your hook into that next row end stitch going up the front center of your sweater and work a single crochet. Insert your hook into that next row end stitch and make a single crochet. And you're just going to continue working in each row end stitch up the center front of your sweater. Insert into the next row end stitch and work a single crochet. Insert into the next row end stitch and work a single crochet. Work up until you get to your stitch marker. Work your single crochet into that stitch. Move your stitch marker up to that same stitch that you just worked in the next row above. And then continue to this corner right here. I'll meet you at the top corner of the neck. So I just worked over to where my stitch marker was, so I'm going to insert my hook into that stitch where my stitch marker is and work my single crochet. And now what you want to do is just unhook that stitch marker, and you're going to move it up to that stitch that you just made, right above where your stitch marker was. So make sure you carry that stitch marker up to that next round and mark that stitch. And then just continue up to the top of the neck, up the top front center to the neck, and I'll meet you there. So I just worked up the front center of my sweater, and I'm up here at the top of the neck. This is where our neck is. Let me just lay this out so you can see it. So I'm up here at the neck, circle of the neck. So I'm going to just come up here, and this is the first, let me zoom back up. This is the first single crochet across the top, so we're going to go right into that single crochet because this basically is the last row end stitch up the center front. So we're going to single crochet into that last end stitch, and then I'm going to go ahead and single crochet one more time into that same stitch. Then we're going to single crochet in each stitch around. Now when you get to that joining seam, you're going to jump over the joining seam. So you will single crochet in each stitch and then jump to that next stitch and just single crochet into that stitch. So you're going to do that around the top of the sweater until you come around to the top. Let me zoom out. It's a little hard to maneuver this. So we're going to work our single crochet around the top of our sweater, and you're going to skip that joining seam and jump to that next single crochet around the back of the neck, skip that next joining seam, and then single crochet in each single crochet across to this corner. And I'll meet you at the corner at the top of the sweater in the center front. So I'll meet you here. So go ahead and single crochet around that neck. I just worked around the top of our neck, and I'm back over to the corner, and now we're going to go down the opposite side of our sweater, and we're going to repeat the same as we did on the opposite side here, where we're going to work one single crochet in each row end stitch down this length, and when you get to the stitch that has the stitch marker, make your single crochet, then move your stitch marker up to that single crochet after you make it, and then finish down to this bottom corner, and I'll meet you there. So I just worked down the opposite side of the front center, and now I'm down here to the bottom corner. So we started over here, so we're just going to work one single crochet in the chain at the base of each one of these remaining stitches across the bottom. So again, you started over here on the left side of this seam. We worked all the way around the sweater. We're over to this bottom corner, and you're going to work one single crochet in the base of each one of these stitches in the chain at the base of each one of these stitches across to this seam. You're going to stop right here into this last stitch, and then I'll show you how to join. So go ahead and work across, and I'll be right back. So I just worked around the corner and across the remaining base of our sweater. I'm over to the seam where we sewed our front to the back. I'm going to tighten up my thread here, and we're going to go ahead and skip this joining seam, insert your hook into that first single crochet, and you're going to slip stitch round one together. Yarn over the hook, pull it through the stitch, and pull it through the loop on your hook. So I'm going to pull my hook up and form a big loop, and then lay my sweater back out. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start here. You're going to chain one and slip stitch into the next stitch. Chain one, slip stitch in the next stitch, and we're going to repeat that same border that we did on the edge of the sleeves, and we're going to start here. We're going to work around the base of the sweater. We're going to come up the front of the sweater, and I want you to stop here when you get to your first stitch marker. So I'm going to go ahead and put my hook back in my loop. I'm going to tighten that up. We're going to, let me move this so you can see a little bit better. We're going to chain one. We're going to skip the first stitch, and we're going to insert our hook into the next stitch and slip stitch. Yarn over the hook, pull it through the stitch, and pull it through the loop on your hook. You're going to chain one. This is the start of the repeat. You're going to insert your hook into the next stitch and slip stitch. Yarn over the hook, pull it through the stitch, and pull it through the loop on your hook. That's your repeat. You're going to chain one is the start. Insert your hook into the next stitch and slip stitch. Yarn over the hook, pull it through the stitch, and pull it through the loop on your hook. It's the same border that we've done around the sleeves. You're going to work around until you get to that first stitch marker. When you get to that first stitch marker, stop, and I'll meet you here. I'm working up the front center of the sweater, and I got to my first stitch marker. So I chained one and I slip stitched into that same stitch as the marker. So now we're going to form a buttonhole loop for our button. So we're going to chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And we're going to come back into the same stitch and slip stitch. Insert into that same stitch as the stitch marker, yarn over the hook, pull it through that same stitch, and pull it through the loop on your hook. We just formed our little buttonhole loop for securing our little sweater. So now we're going to go ahead and chain one, leave your stitch marker in that stitch, go into the next stitch, and slip stitch. Sorry, my safety pin is getting in the way. And you're going to slip stitch into that next stitch, and you're just going to repeat your pattern, chain one, slip stitch into that next stitch, chain one, slip stitch into that next stitch. And when you work around to the other side of your sweater, when you get to this stitch marker, you're not going to do anything. You're just going to work your pattern right down, leaving your stitch marker in place. So you don't have to do anything special here. You just continue working that pattern right down the opposite side of that sweater front, but leave your stitch marker in place. So go ahead and finish working your chain one, slip stitch in each stitch around until you get back to the beginning of where you started in round 2, and I'll meet you there and show you how to fasten off. I'm over at the end of round 2. I just did my chain one, slip stitch into the last stitch, and then we have this joining bar. This is not a stitch, so we're going to end our round by chaining one, and then we're going to go right into that first stitch where we chained one in the beginning of the round and slip stitch. Yarn over the hook, pull it through that stitch, and pull it through the loop on your hook. I'm going to fasten off my work. I'm going to weave in all my ends, and I'll be back and we'll do the little finishing touches. So round 2 border is all finished. Our sweater is completely done except for a couple little touches that I like to do. Now I'm going to take this upper corner of our neck and I'm going to pull it back and fold it down. So I'm going to fold it right down. So if you look at your stitch marker, let me see if I can zoom in just a little bit closer. So your stitch marker is here. I'm going to bend that down to 1 stitch above our stitch marker. And then I'm just going to take a small piece of yarn on my yarn needle. I'm going to lift this up and come up from the bottom, just through this top piece. Make sure you don't go through the back piece. I'm coming up and then I'm just going to go right back down and I'm putting one tack stitch. I'm going to turn this over and I'm just going to tie my knot and weave in my ends. I'm only putting one stitch there. And then we'll weave in these ends and hide them. So we're going to do that to both sides. So that side is pulled down. Now I'm going to do it to the opposite side. I'm going to just go ahead and pull it down to about the same distance. So just kind of look at your sweater and you want it one stitch above this stitch marker. Again, I'm going to just lift up on this piece. I'm going to come up from the bottom right into the corner here on that corner edge. And then I'm just going to come right back down. I'm only tacking one stitch. I'm just going to go ahead and tie a knot and then weave these ends in. And then we form just a little bit of style to our sweater, which causes a little collar there. So then we have our button loop over here. Now I can take my stitch marker out at this point where the buttonhole is. I can take my stitch marker out on the other side. And you need a button. I did forget to mention that in the beginning of the video. I have 4 different buttons here. I'm going to lay them all on here and see which one I like best. So, I think I like this blue one here a little bit better. Or do I like this one? I'm going to go with this one. So I'll remove those 3 buttons. And this button is basically about a 1/2 inch button. So I'm going to line it up with our chain 7 buttonhole and just bring it right over here to the edge of the sweater like so. I'm going to sew that button on there and then you can loop this over and this holds your sweater together. So I'm going to go ahead, sew my button on. I'll be back and show you what the finished sweater looks like on my baby doll. So our baby sweater is finished. It's on my little doll here. I'm not really sure what size doll this is, so I had to fold up the sleeves because this is a pretty small doll. This is a size 6-month sweater here. I'll also have the size for a 0 to 3 month baby in the instructions. The instructions are available on my website, creativegrandma.net, and I'll also have a link in the description box. This is a wonderful, very easy sweater if you take your time. It's 5 simple, easy pieces that you just crochet in a very simple pattern. You sew them together, put a very simple border around your garment, add a little button, fold the edges down to form a collar, and again, it's just a wonderful way. If you've never made a sweater before, this is probably one of the easiest ways to get started making garments, by making a simple sweater where you just use regular pieces that don't have a lot of shaping. So I hope you enjoyed this video and our little sweater here. Look in the description box for that link for the pattern. And thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this video of this little baby sweater, and happy crocheting.